A lot of people who pulled, the ballot for Donald Trump last year, they didn't sign up for this, right? They voted for lower prices. They voted for lower taxes. They voted for traditional, Republican values, smaller government, all those kind of things. They're not getting that. I mean, I just read that we passed the national debt passed $37 trillion in August, passed $38 trillion last week. That's $1 trillion in 2 months, right? They're not getting the small government. I don't think they voted for militarized cities. I don't think they voted for extrajudicial killings off the coast, or not even off the coast, 2,000 miles from the coast in Venezuela, right? So I think the MAGA wing of the Republican Party are overplaying their hands. And I think the only way we get past it is for them to start losing elections. This is a state government position, right? And if you pay attention to what's been happening at the state level for the last several years, there's a lot of things that have not gone well, right? We mentioned the abortion ban. I think most voters agree that that's not the right way to do it. We never expanded Medicaid. I think that's still possible. It gets a little weird because of this new bill that came out. I think it's still possible to do it. It's harder to do, and you don't expand quite as much, but it's still possible. And without it, we've seen rural hospitals closing all around the state. We're looking at 750,000 Georgians are about to be priced out of insurance in January. That's a crisis. That's on top of I think it's 1.2 million Georgians who don't have any insurance at all right now. You put those two together, that's 2 million out of 11 million Georgia citizens that have no access to healthcare. The SNAP stuff was 1.4 million Georgians. Would it be 1.4 million Georgians that were dependent on SNAP for nutritional assistance if the minimum wage had been raised a few years ago? Probably not, right? People would probably be able to make ends meet a little bit better. And we talked about how many Georgians are about to go without insurance. Those of us who have insurance through an employer, it's not that great either. I don't know about you, but I'm paying a pretty hefty premium every month and a $5,000 deductible. So, I'm paying thousands of dollars every year just to have insurance, and then thousands of dollars on top of that if I use it, right? It's crazy. You look at car insurance. Georgia has one of the highest car insurance rates, premiums, in the Southeast, higher than all of our neighbors. Housing. I've almost lost the question that you asked me at this point. I
just to highlight things on your platform that you are really passionate about.
Housing. I know that's a big issue here in Athens. It doesn't seem like it's as big as one in Oconee, but the truth is housing prices going up and the supply not keeping up. Supply and demand, economics 101, right? If you don't have enough houses for the people, then the prices of those houses are going to go up, right? We're seeing that in Athens. We need more supply at the end of the day. At the state level, we can pass incentives for local governments to change their zoning or maybe incentivize them to approve, more dense plans, housing plans. People don't think that's impacting Oconee County, but if you think about it, why do most people move to Oconee County? You probably know, right? It's the school system. It's one of the best school systems in the state, if not the country. People like to move there, and who moves for school systems? It's young families. Well, if things keep going the way they are in Oconee County, young families aren't going to be able to afford to live there. And I think a lot of people out there don't even see it coming, but it's there. It's on the horizon.
A Republican gerrymander just backfired spectacularly in their faces. Democrats flipped another seat, and guess where this happened? Georgia. House District 121 at the state level just went blue, and this wasn't just any flip. This was a district that MAGA Republicans in Georgia specifically gerrymandered to make even more red. They drew the lines, they carved up communities, they engineered this seat to be safely Republican, and it went blue anyway. Let me tell you exactly what went down, because this story is absolutely wild. Democratic candidate Eric Gistler won Georgia's House District seat 121. Now, to be clear, this isn't federal Congress. This is the state House District in Georgia. And Gistler won by about 2 to 3 points in an area that Trump carried by +2 in 2024. So already we're looking at a significant swing from Trump's performance just a month ago. But here's where it gets really interesting. Eric Gistler has run for this seat before. You know when he ran? Last November, like literally just over a year ago. And guess what the result was back then, before Donald Trump destroyed the American economy? Gissler lost 61 to 39. He got crushed by a Republican named Marcus Wadewer. That's a 22-point blowout. So to recap what we're looking at here, Eric Gissler lost 61 to 39 in November 2024, and now in December 2025, on December 9th, he won 51% to 49%. He won by 2 points. That's a massive, massive swing in just over a year. We're talking about a 24-point shift in the margin. By the way, I am trying to do my best to gather all the information I can for you and share it with you. Please leave your likes and comments, and I would be grateful if you subscribed. Let's continue. Greg Bluestein, who does fantastic work as a local journalist in Georgia, one of the best political reporters covering the state, he called it a stealth upset. Democrat Eric Gissler flips a GOP-held Georgia House seat spanning parts of Athens and Oconee County. Gissler won 39% of the vote last November. He captured 51% tonight to defeat a Republican backed by Brian Kemp. So maybe this Republican doesn't consider himself MAGA per se. Maybe he tries to maintain some distance from Trump's craziest impulses. But when you aid and abet Donald Trump's agenda that has destroyed lives in Georgia, I consider that MAGA. And he was endorsed by other GOP leaders, so he had the full backing of the Republican establishment. This Georgia flip comes on the same night as a massive GOP loss in the Miami mayor's race. In the 2021 election, the current MAGA mayor Suarez won by 67%. 67%. And now Democratic candidate Eileen Higgins beat the MAGA Republican candidate in Miami 59.3% to 40.7%. She won by about 19 points when the prior Democrat in 2021 lost by 67 points. That's an 86-point swing in margin. 86 points. Let that sink in for a moment. But let's talk about what the gerrymander backfiring was all about in Georgia, because this is crucial context. Zachary Danini explains it perfectly. A Republican gerrymander just backfired in Georgia. Despite splitting Athens into 3 conservative-leaning districts, Democrats flipped a Trump plus 12 Georgia House district, seat 121, turning one of those engineered red seats blue. So Republicans specifically carved up Athens, which is a college town with a liberal population, splitting it 3 ways to dilute Democratic votes and create multiple safe Republican seats. And one of those supposedly safe seats just went blue anyway. Look at how Gissler did it. In Clark County, a 28-point shift toward Democrats. In Oconee County, an 8-point shift. Those are huge numbers. But here's the most stunning data point. At the University of Georgia campus precinct, Gissler outperformed Kamala Harris by 45 points. 45 points better than Harris did. And countywide, he outperformed her by 28 points. This shows that young voters are absolutely done with Trump and MAGA Republicans. Zachary Danini had flagged Yale polling data showing Trump's growing weakness with young voters, and we saw that dynamic play out at the ballot box. We've been covering extensively how young voters aged 18 to 29 have seen the rug pulled out from under them by Donald Trump. They know they've been defrauded. They know Trump sold their futures out to AI companies and data centers. They can't afford rent. They have no realistic path to buying homes. Trump lied to them about everything. He promised things would be affordable on day one. He lied. Things are less affordable now than before. And Trump continues telling young people they're living in a golden age while they struggle to survive. He's used the Department of Education not to help students, but to engage in punitive conduct, attacking young people and destroying their futures. Trump hates young people, and he's destroying their lives. The data shows it, and now the election results confirm it. But here's what I want to highlight. How did Eric Gissler win this race? What was his message? Affordability, affordability, affordability. That's it. He talked to voters about the issues that actually matter in their daily lives. He listened to their struggles and offered real solutions. Here was an interview Gissler did with Athens Politics Nerd, a local YouTube channel. Shout out to Athens Politics Nerd. We see the work you're doing. Keep it up. This interview got about 174 views before I pulled it for this video. We do our research at the Midas Touch Network. And in this interview, Gissler talks about how lots of people in Georgia held their nose and voted for Donald Trump thinking they were getting affordability. Watch how Gissler describes what actually happened. He says a lot of people who pulled the ballot for Donald Trump last year didn't sign up for this. They voted for lower prices. They voted for lower taxes. They voted for traditional Republican values, smaller government, all those things. They're not getting that. The national debt passed $37 trillion in August, then passed $38 trillion last week. That's $1 trillion in 2 months. They're not getting small government. Gissler says he doesn't think they voted for militarized cities. He doesn't think they voted for extrajudicial killings off the coast, or actually 2,000 miles from the coast in Venezuela. The MAGA wing of the Republican Party is overplaying their hand, and he thinks the only way past it is for them to start losing elections. This is brilliant messaging. This isn't some flashy, consultant-driven campaign. This is a guy from Georgia running for state office saying, look, I'm going to try to make your lives better, and let me explain what's actually happening. He talks about what people in Oconee County are telling him, what's happening in Clark County, what's going on in their school districts and communities. Just listen to what he says about state-level issues. Gissler explains this is a state government position, and if you pay attention to what's been happening at the state level for several years, a lot has not gone well. He mentions the abortion ban that most voters think isn't the right approach. Georgia never expanded Medicaid, which is still possible, but harder now. Without expansion, rural hospitals have been closing all around the state. About 750,000 Georgians are about to be priced out of insurance in January. That's a crisis. On top of the 1.2 million Georgians who don't have any insurance at all right now. Put those together, and that's 2 million out of 11 million Georgia citizens with no access to health care. He talks about SNAP, noting 1.4 million Georgians depend on it for nutritional assistance. Would it be 1.4 million if the minimum wage had been raised years ago? Probably not. People would be able to make ends meet better. And for those with employer insurance, it's not that great either. He pays a hefty premium every month and has a $5,000 deductible. So he's paying thousands of dollars every year just to have insurance, and then thousands more if he actually uses it. It's crazy. Georgia has some of the highest car insurance premiums in the Southeast, higher than all their neighbors. Housing is a massive issue. Athens housing prices are going up while supply isn't keeping up. Supply and demand, economics 101. If you don't have enough houses for people, prices go up. They need more supply. At the state level, they can pass incentives for local governments to change zoning or approve more dense housing plans. People don't think this impacts Oconee County, but most people move there for the school system, one of the best in the state, if not the country. And who moves for school systems? Young families. But if things keep going the way they are, young families won't be able to afford to live in Oconee County. A lot of people don't even see it coming, but it's on the horizon. This is what real populist messaging sounds like. This is a candidate talking about actual problems people face and offering concrete solutions, not culture war nonsense, not distractions and deflections, just straight talk about affordability, healthcare, housing, education, the things that determine whether families can make it or not. Now contrast that with what Donald Trump has been saying. Trump claims everything is A+++ with the economy. Everything's great. But CNN's fact checker Philip called him out. Americans aren't giving Trump an A. A Fox News poll found 76% of voters have a negative view of the economy. That's 6 points higher than how they felt at the end of the Biden presidency. That's really saying something. And at Trump's speech in Pennsylvania at Mount Airy Casino, which he did in what looks like a wedding reception area, that's what Trump's been reduced to. No offense to the venue. I'm sure it could be nice for weddings. But this is where Trump's rallies are now, tiny wedding venues. Here's what Trump says. He claims prices are high, but coming down substantially. Then he goes on this bizarre rant about affordability being a hoax, a new word the media invented to attack him. Trump says they look at the camera and say this election is all about affordability. They never talked about it before. It's all fake. Meanwhile, he gets interrupted by someone and he jokes about not being allowed to run. They're saying 4 more years. There's a new hat. He's completely incoherent, rambling about nothing while Americans struggle with the cost of living crisis his policies created. You'll recall in Georgia, back when the blue tsunami hit in early November, 2 statewide Georgia Public Service Commission positions flipped. This was one of the first times in decades you saw major statewide races flip like this, and they were nearly 30-point shifts. Public Service Commission Seat 2 shifted from R plus 2 to D plus 25. Seat 3 flipped from R plus 2 to D plus 26. Those are absolutely massive swings that happened on that Tuesday in November. And look, I'm certainly no Marjorie Taylor Greene fan. Even as she's reinvented herself as some kind of anti-Trump crusader, I think a lot of it is BS. She added to the toxicity in our politics, and I don't forget that. But I'm glad she's speaking out about Trump now. And she knows Georgia. She's won elections there in her congressional district. She sees what's happening with Republicans. Here's Greene talking about how Trump bragging that the economy is doing well is the worst political move. Greene says it's absolutely the worst move and the worst political move to have the House in recess instead of working. When asked if Republicans are unified as a party, she says it seems like Republicans in Washington, D.C. may be unified, but not across the country. There are a lot of disenfranchised 2024 voters, and that was clearly obvious in Tuesday's election. She pushes back against people saying, well, we knew Virginia, New Jersey, and New York would go Democrat. She's from Georgia, and they lost 2 statewide Public Service Commission seats heavily. Democrats won those seats at 60%. Republicans only got 40%. There are other races in Pennsylvania and Mississippi proving the same thing, that voters are not happy. Greene says everyone should pay attention to the true financial hardship Americans are facing. This is affecting her children's generation, who are 22, 26, and 28. That generation is looking toward the future with very little hope. She ran for Congress in 2020, criticizing Democrats and Republicans almost equally, because Congress and Washington always fail the American people. And the alarms are blaring right now. Even Marjorie Taylor Greene gets it. When someone that extreme, someone who's been such a MAGA loyalist, is sounding alarm bells about how bad things are for Republicans, you know the situation is dire. She sees the writing on the wall. She knows these Georgia flips are just the beginning. Finally, let's talk about that Miami mayor's race, because there was a pivotal moment at the debate that sealed MAGA candidate Emilio Gonzalez's fate. The first time in 30 years that seat flipped blue. At the debate, Gonzalez's Trump endorsement came up, and that proved to be the dagger that destroyed his campaign, because Trump is toxic right now. The moderator notes the Trump endorsement has gotten Gonzalez a lot of attention and asks if he sought it out. Gonzalez says it came as a surprise. He was resting. His phone went off. He thought someone died. Then people told him he'd been endorsed by the president. He knows Trump is a Florida resident. There's talk of putting a library in Miami. Trump follows Florida events closely. It wasn't something where he called up asking for the endorsement. The moderator then asks the key question. Given that Miami is a city of immigrants, 60% of Miami residents were born outside the United States. When you accept Trump's endorsement, and Trump tweets that he believes in you because you agree with his vision on migrant crime, do you support rounding up immigrants? The vast majority of people being detained don't have criminal records. Are you supportive, and will you help Trump enforce that policy? Gonzalez tries to dodge. He says he supports rounding up people who commit crimes. He can't defend rapists or murderers. But the moderator presses him, noting the majority of people being picked up aren't rapists or murderers. Gonzalez claims this is a federal issue about Homeland Security, not something for the mayor of Miami. He says he knows who to talk to from his time as immigration director. He'll advocate for the community, but you don't want to just take on the president. Then Eileen Higgins gets her response, and it's devastating. She says she's very concerned about what's happening in Miami for 2 reasons. First, they said they'd go after criminals, but they're going after everybody. Every time she's out in neighborhoods, people tell her about someone they know, a friend or relative who's had something happen to them. In addition to being inhumane and cruel, it's bad for the economy. 2 weeks ago, the federal government eliminated TPS for Venezuelans. Almost 100,000 people have TPS from Venezuela in Miami-Dade County. She spoke to a gentleman with a health clinic who received notification from the federal government that he had to fire 27 people who lost their work status. The moderator asks if Gonzalez should have rejected the Trump endorsement. Higgins says he's the president, and she's very glad the president did not endorse her. That moment crystallized everything. Trump's endorsement went from being an asset to being political poison. In Miami, a city where 60% of residents are immigrants, having Trump's support means you support his cruel immigration policies that are tearing families apart and destroying the economy. Higgins made that connection crystal clear, and voters responded by giving her a nearly 20-point victory. So let's tie this all together, because we're seeing an overwhelming pattern. Massive Democratic overperformance across the board, massive MAGA Republican drops everywhere. This bodes incredibly well for the midterms. There's overwhelming momentum showing people are sick and tired of this Trump regime. They're sick of the pain. They're sick of the authoritarian fascist behavior. They're sick of watching their democracy get ripped away, their health care stolen, their futures destroyed. Georgia House District 121 flipped blue with a 24-point swing. Miami's mayor's seat flipped blue for the first time in 30 years with an 86-point swing. Georgia's Public Service Commission seats flipped with 30-point swings. These aren't marginal changes. These are tidal wave shifts in voter sentiment, and they're happening in red areas, in gerrymandered districts, in places Republicans thought were safe. The Republican gerrymander in Georgia that split Athens 3 ways to dilute Democratic votes backfired completely. They engineered that district to be safely red, and it went blue anyway, because when people are struggling this badly, when the economy is hurting families this directly, no amount of gerrymandering can overcome voter anger. Young voters are leading the charge. That 45-point overperformance compared to Kamala Harris at the UGA campus precinct tells you everything. Young people know they've been lied to. They know Trump sold them out. They can't afford rent, can't buy homes, can't see a future, and they're showing up to vote against the people who destroyed their prospects. Eric Gistler won by talking about affordability, healthcare, housing, education, the basics, the things that matter to people's daily lives. He didn't need flashy consultants or massive ad buys. He just needed to listen to voters, understand their struggles, and offer real solutions. That's what winning looks like. Meanwhile, Trump is in wedding venue conference rooms, rambling incoherently about how affordability is a hoax and everything's actually great. He's completely detached from reality, and his MAGA candidates are going down in flames because they're tied to his failed policies and his toxic brand. Marjorie Taylor Greene sees it, Republican insiders see it, and now voters are demonstrating it at the ballot box election after election. The blue wave isn't coming, it's already here. It started in November, and it's building momentum with every special election, every local race, every time voters get a chance to deliver their verdict on Trump's presidency. These aren't isolated incidents. This is a pattern, a clear, undeniable pattern of voters rejecting MAGA extremism and Trump's failed economic policies. From Georgia to Florida to special elections across the country, the message is consistent. People want affordability. They want health care. They want their democracy protected. They want politicians who actually care about solving problems instead of culture war nonsense. And Democrats who focus on those issues, who talk to voters about their real struggles, who offer concrete solutions, those Democrats are winning even in gerrymandered red districts. That should terrify Republicans heading into the midterms, because if they're losing seats they specifically engineered to be safe, if they're getting crushed in areas Trump won just months ago, what's going to happen when every House seat and a third of Senate seats are on the ballot? The Republican gerrymander backfired. Trump's endorsement became poison. MAGA policies are deeply unpopular. The economy is hurting families. Young voters are mobilized against Trump. And Democrats are flipping seats in places they had no business winning. That's where we are. That's the political landscape heading into 2026. And if this momentum continues, if these trends hold, we're looking at a potential bloodbath for Republicans in the midterms. Keep fighting, keep organizing, keep voting. The wins are piling up because people are engaged and motivated. This is what democracy looks like when citizens refuse to accept authoritarian rule and failed policies. We'll keep reporting on every flip, every victory, every sign that Americans are rejecting Trump's vision for the country. Because this story, this pattern of Democratic wins, this is the most important political story happening right now. And it's only going to get bigger as we approach November 2026.